The sun over the Arizona desert was a relentless white-hot coin in a pale blue sky. It baked the hard, cracked earth and made the air over the highway shimmer like a ghost. Inside their old, rattling sedan, the air conditioning was a weak whisper against the oppressive heat. Jin drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his dark eyes fixed on the empty road ahead. In the passenger seat, his younger sister Sue stared out the window watching the cacti and dusty brush roll by. They were a long way from home. Not just from Seoul, but from the life they had known. Their small apartment, the bustling streets, the smell of food vendors, all of it was gone, replaced by this vast, silent emptiness. After their parents passed away, the world had felt small and broken. The inheritance money was not much, but it was enough for one crazy idea: a new start. "Are you sure this is the right road?" Jin asked, his voice rough with tiredness. "There's nothing out here." Sue looked at the map on her phone. The signal was weak. "The GPS says it's just a few more miles. It has to be here somewhere." The online listing had called it a handyman's special, a unique historic property with great potential. The photos showed a low, sprawling house with a flat roof, its paint bleached and peeling, its windows dark and empty. What made it strange was the name attached to it. It was once very briefly owned by President John F. Kennedy, a retreat he had barely used. Now it was a forgotten ruin, sold for a price so low it was almost a joke. Jin had seen a money pit. He saw the sagging roof, the broken windows, the years of neglect. But Sue, ever the dreamer, had seen something else. She saw a piece of history. She saw a story. "It's an adventure, Appa," she had said, using the Korean word for older brother. "It's ours. We can make it into anything we want." He had given in, as he often did with her. She was all the family he had left. So they pooled every last one, converted it to dollars, and in a bewildering online auction, became the owners of a piece of American history that nobody else wanted. Finally, a rusty leaning mailbox appeared by the side of the road. The number on it was almost faded away. Jin turned the car onto a dirt track that was more of a suggestion than a road. The car bounced and shuddered over rocks and deep ruts. After a quarter of a mile, the house came into view. It was worse than the pictures. The main building was a mid-century modern structure, now a skeleton of its former self. Whole sections of the wall were missing, revealing the dark, rotting wood inside. The famous flat roof dipped dangerously in the middle. A patio was littered with the shattered glass of sliding doors. A large, dry swimming pool was a cracked concrete pit filled with sand and dead leaves. The silence was heavy and complete, broken only by the buzzing of flies. Jin turned off the car engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. He let out a long, slow breath. "Sue," he began, his voice tight. "I know," she said quickly, cutting him off. She pushed the car door open and stepped out into the blistering heat. The dry air smelled of dust and sagebrush. She walked towards the house, not looking at the destruction but at the shape of it, the lines of it against the stark desert sky. "Look at the design, Appa. It has good bones." Jin got out, slamming his door harder than he needed to. "It has no bones, Sue. It's a corpse." He kicked a loose stone, sending it skittering across the dusty ground. "We spent everything on this." "We spent everything on a chance," Sue corrected him softly. She walked up to the front door, a massive slab of warped wood. She reached out and touched it. The wood was hot and rough under her fingers. "This is ours. Our land, our house. No one can take that away from us." Her words, full of a hope he couldn't feel, shamed him a little. He was the older brother. He was supposed to be the protector, the provider. He had to be strong for her. He walked up beside her, pulling the heavy, rusty key from his pocket. The real estate agent had mailed it to them with a note that simply said, "Good luck." The key turned in the lock with a grinding screech that made them both wince. Jin put his shoulder against the door and pushed. With a groan of protest from the wood and the hinges, the door swung inward, releasing a puff of stale, hot air. They stepped into the dim interior. The sunlight streamed in through broken windows and holes in the roof, creating dusty spotlights on the floor. The living room was vast and empty. A thick layer of pale dust blown in from the desert covered everything like a shroud. A few pieces of furniture remained. A sun-bleached couch with its stuffing pulled out by animals. A chair with broken legs. A coffee table scarred with water rings and time. Sue walked slowly through the room, her footsteps leaving prints in the dust. She ran a hand along a wall, the wallpaper curling away at her touch. Can you imagine? She whispered. President Kennedy might have stood right here. I'm imagining the cost of a new roof, Jin muttered, looking up at the sky visible through a large crack in the ceiling. And new windows. And new floors. And new everything. They explored the rest of the ground floor. The kitchen was a disaster of rusted appliances and cracked countertops. A dining room held only a large dead spider plant in a shattered pot. But it was the study that caught Sue's attention. It was at the back of the house, a room lined with dark wood panels. One whole wall was a bookshelf, now empty and cobwebbed. A massive, heavy desk sat in the center. One of its legs collapsed, causing it to tilt sadly. A large stone fireplace took up another wall. Unlike the other rooms, this one felt different. It was just as dusty, just as damaged by the sun coming through the big window. But there was a feeling, a stillness that was deeper than just emptiness. Sue walked along the wood-paneled walls. The panels were beautiful, a rich dark wood, though now dull with neglect. She trailed her fingers over them. They were smooth and solid. Then near the corner, her finger stopped. One panel looked exactly like the others, but the dust on the floor in front of it was slightly thinner, as if it had been disturbed not by wind or animals, but by something else. Jin, she said. Look at this. Jin came over, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm. What is it? This panel. It doesn't look right. Jin looked at it. He was good with his hands, good at seeing how things were built. He saw the seamless joinery, the perfect fit. It looks fine to me, Sue. It's just a wall. He tapped on it. It sounded solid. But the dust, she insisted, pointing at the floor. Probably a rat's nest behind it, he said, turning away. We have bigger problems. We need to find a room that's somewhat intact to sleep in tonight. It'll be dark soon. Sue didn't move. She kept looking at the panel. It wasn't just the dust. It was a feeling. A faint, almost imaginary vibration she felt through her fingertips when she pressed them against the wood. It was so low it was more like a hum in her bones than a sound in her ears. She left the study for a moment and went to the car, coming back with a notebook and a pen. She started making a list not of repairs but of the house's features. She noted the fireplace, the desk, the bookshelves. She was trying to understand the space, to feel its history. As she stood by the cold, ash-filled fireplace, her foot knocked against one of the stones that formed the hearth. It was a large, flat stone. It shifted. Not much, just a tiny, gritty movement. Curious, she bent down. The stone was loose. She dug her fingers around its edges and wiggled it. It was heavy, but it moved. With a grunt, she pulled it forward. There was a soft, deep, mechanical click. It was a sound that did not belong in this dead house. It was a clean, precise sound. From across the room where the suspicious wall panel was came a faint whisper of movement. Sue stood up quickly, her heart suddenly pounding. The seamless wooden panel, which had no handle, no groove, no visible seam, was now sliding sideways into the wall. It moved silently, smoothly on some hidden mechanism. It revealed not more wall, not a rat's nest, but a dark rectangular opening. A staircase made of the same gunmetal gray alloy descended steeply into the earth. A wave of cool, dry air flowed out of the opening, carrying a strange, metallic smell. It was the smell of a hospital or a laboratory. It was the complete opposite of the hot, dusty desert air. Jin, Sue called out, her voice a shaky whisper. Then louder, Jin! Jin came running from the other room, a tire iron in his hand, thinking she was hurt. He skidded to a halt in the doorway, his eyes wide. He stared at the impossible opening in the wall, at the perfect, man-made stairs leading down into darkness. The setting sun cast a long, orange beam through the broken window, illuminating the swirling dust in the room. The beam cut right across the dark opening, but it did not penetrate the darkness inside. The doorway was a black hole, a piece of absolute night hidden inside their broken, deserted mansion. Jin lowered the tire iron, his mouth agape. All his worries about the roof and the money vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp thrill of fear and wonder. Sue took a step closer to him, her earlier excitement now mixed with a healthy dose of terror. Their new life, their great adventure, had just become much, much stranger. The history of this house was not just in the past. It was waiting for them right under their feet. The silence in the study was now a heavy, living thing. The gentle hum of the desert outside, the buzz of insects, the whisper of the wind. All of it was gone, swallowed by the dark rectangle in the wall. Cool. Sterile air continued to flow from the opening, making the sweat on Jin's skin turn cold. Sue stood frozen, one hand still pointing at the doorway. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. Jin tightened his grip on the tire iron. It felt silly and small now, a toy against this unknown. "What is this?" Jin whispered, his voice cracking. He took a cautious step forward, peering into the darkness. There were no visible steps, just a deep blackness. "I don't know," Sue said. Her scientific mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. A bomb shelter? A secret wine cellar? But the air smelled wrong. It was too clean, too processed. And the mechanism. The silent, sliding panel was technology far beyond this old house. Jin pulled his phone from his pocket and switched on the flashlight. He shone the beam into the opening. The light revealed a steep staircase, made of a smooth gray metal that seemed to absorb the light. The steps descended into the earth, turning out of sight. "We have to go down," Sue said, her voice barely audible. "No," Jin said immediately, his protective instincts surging. "No, we don't. This is not our business. We should close it. Call someone." "Call who?" Sue asked, turning to him. Her eyes were wide, but they shone with a fierce curiosity. "The police? And tell them what? That we found a secret basement in our creepy house? They will think we are crazy. Or worse, they will come and take it from us. This is our house, Jin. This is part of it." Jin knew she was right. The thought of authorities swarming their hard-won property made him feel sick. This was their secret, their problem. He took a deep breath of the strange, cool air. "Okay," he said, his voice low. "But you stay behind me. And if I say we run, we run. No questions." Sue nodded quickly. Jin led the way, his phone's flashlight beam dancing on the metallic steps. The staircase was narrow and steep. The walls were the same smooth gray alloy, seamless and cold to the touch. There were no wires, no pipes, no light switches. After about 20 steps, the staircase ended, opening into a wider space. Jin stopped, holding his phone high. The light was weak, but it was enough to make out the shape of a large circular room. The air here was even cooler, with a constant low hum that vibrated through the floor. It was the same hum Sue had felt through the wall panel. "There must be a light," Sue whispered from behind him. As if hearing her words, the room responded. A soft blue-white light began to glow from the walls themselves. It was not a harsh light, but a gentle, ambient radiance that grew until the entire chamber was illuminated. They both gasped. The room was a perfect circle. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of the same seamless gunmetal gray material. In the center of the room, on a low raised platform, stood an object. It was an obelisk about as tall as a man and made of a pure obsidian black material. It was perfectly smooth, with no seams, no buttons, no markings of any kind. It stood there, absorbing the light from the walls without reflecting a single speck. It was the most alien thing they had ever seen. Along the curved wall were panels that looked like consoles. They were flat and dark, but as Jin and Sue took a hesitant step into the room, one of the panels lit up. A stream of complex geometric symbols flowed across its surface. They were like nothing either of them had ever seen, a language of light and shape. "This isn't a bomb shelter," Jin stated the obvious, his voice full of awe. Sue, drawn by an irresistible force, walked slowly towards the lit panel. She was careful not to touch the black obelisk, giving it a wide berth. She stood before the console, watching the symbols dance. They were beautiful and confusing. "It looks like a computer," she said. "An alien computer," Jin added, staying near the staircase, ready to flee. "Sue, be careful." Sue reached out a trembling hand. She didn't know what she was doing, but she felt a need to interact, to understand. As her fingertips neared the surface of the panel, the flowing symbols froze. Then they began to change. They swirled and rearranged themselves, their sharp angles softening into elegant, familiar characters. Hanja, classical Korean characters. Jin stepped closer, his fear momentarily forgotten. What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," Sue breathed. It did it by itself. A line of text formed in the center of the screen, written in perfect archaic Korean. "I am the custodian. You are not the designated contact. Identify yourselves." Sue and Jin looked at each other, their faces pale. Sue looked around, but there was no speaker. The words had just appeared. "How do we answer?" Jin whispered. Sue, her heart in her throat, spoke to the screen. "My name is Sue. This is my brother Jin. We own this house now." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, new text appeared. Query. Status of John Fitzgerald Kennedy? The question sent a chill down Sue's spine.
He died, she said softly.
A long time ago. He was assassinated. The symbols on the screen swirled violently for a second, then settled. The next message was simple. Explain. Sue did her best. She told the custodian about that day in Dallas in 1963. About the gunshots, the conspiracy theories, the national tragedy. She explained that it was over 50 years ago. The custodian was silent for a long time. The only sound was the low hum of the room. Finally, new words formed. The timeline has been compromised. The mission has failed. What mission? Jin asked, finding his voice. Who are you? I am an automated archivist from a vessel that is no longer operational. My creator is no longer among the living. I made contact with the human John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He was the designated contact. Our purpose was to prepare your species. Prepare us for what? Sue asked, a knot of dread forming in her stomach. In response, the main screen went dark. A moment later, the entire curved wall of the chamber lit up, not with text, but with a moving image. It was a hologram, so real and crisp it felt like they could step into it. They saw a younger John F. Kennedy. He was not the confident president from history books. He was sitting right here in this very chamber, his face pale and serious. He was looking at a shimmering, shifting form of light that floated in the air where the black obelisk now stood. A voice, calm and melodic, filled the room. It was not speaking English or Korean, but they understood it perfectly, as if the meaning was being placed directly into their minds. The galaxy is not an empty wilderness. President Kennedy, the light form said, it is a community. Your species is being observed. Your rapid progress has been noted. But so has your violence, your division. The holographic Kennedy leaned forward. We are a young species. We have our struggles. But we have great potential. Potential is not enough, the emissary, whom the custodian identified as Kale, replied. The Galactic Compact judges a species by its unified will to survive and grow. By its current trajectory, humanity is classified as a volatile sapient. The verdict is quarantine. Quarantine? Jin whispered. The scene shifted. They saw a star map. A red circle appeared around a small yellow star. Their sun. Quarantine is a permanent sterilization of the system, Kale's voice explained, calm and terrible. It is a mercy to prevent a violent species from spreading its chaos. It is the law. The hologram showed Kennedy standing up, his fists clenched. There must be another way. Give us a chance. Let me show our people. Let me show them we are not alone, that we have a place in the universe. It will unite us. A presentation of unity is your only chance, Kale agreed. A global demonstration that your species can look beyond its tribes. You must reveal our existence. You must reveal the challenge. You must convince your entire world to speak with one voice. You have one of your years to prepare the announcement. The hologram faded, leaving the wall a blank, glowing surface again. Sue and Jin stood in stunned silence. The weight of what they had just learned was crushing. Aliens were real. A galactic government was real. And over 50 years ago, humanity had been sentenced to death, and the only man who knew about it was killed before he could save them. The speech in Dallas, Sue said, her mind making the connection. He wasn't just talking about politics. He was going to tell the world. He was going to try and unite us. Jin sank to the floor, his legs unable to hold him. He put his head in his hands. And they killed him for it. The custodian's text returned to the central screen. The designated contact was eliminated. The mission failed. The quarantine clock continues. The assessment of your species is ongoing. The verdict is unchanged. Sue looked from the screen to her brother, then to the silent black obelisk. They had found more than a secret room. They had found the most important truth in human history, buried and forgotten in a deserted mansion. And now that truth was theirs. They were the only ones who knew that humanity was living on borrowed time, completely unaware that its fate had been sealed long ago. The cool, humming air of the chamber felt suddenly suffocating. Jin remained on the floor, his head in his hands, trying to process the impossible. Sue stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the custodian's screen, the words, "The verdict is unchanged," burning into her mind. Ongoing? Jin's voice was muffled by his hands. He looked up, his face pale. What does that mean? Are they still out there, watching us? The text on the screen shifted. Observation is continuous. The parameters for the verdict remain: significant global conflict, failure to address planetary environmental crises, persistent tribal divisions. The data supports the initial conclusion, so nothing has changed, Sue whispered. The hope she had felt upon buying this house, the dream of a new start, felt like a cruel joke. They had inherited a death sentence for their entire species. We have to tell someone, Jin said, pushing himself to his feet. His legs were still shaky. The government, the army, somebody with power. That course of action is not recommended, the custodian responded instantly. Why not? Jin demanded, gesturing wildly at the screen. They need to know. We have to prepare. A new holographic image flickered to life on the wall. It showed a different scene. It was still this chamber, but it was cleaner, newer. A different man was here. He was not President Kennedy. He wore a sharp military-style uniform, but without any clear insignia. His face was hard, his eyes cold. He was speaking to the shimmering form of Kale. The president's plan is a fantasy, the man said, his voice crisp and arrogant. Telling the public will cause panic, chaos. You can't unite sheep by showing them the wolf. You control them, Kale's light form pulsed. Unity cannot be forced. It must be chosen. It is the only metric that matters. Your metric is flawed, the man snapped. Humanity understands strength. You give us your technology. We will build a fleet. We will create a unified world through strength and order. We will be ready for your compact. A world unified by fear is not unified, Kyle replied, his melodic voice firm. It is a prison. That is not the path. The hologram changed. They saw the same military man in a different room above ground in the mansion when it was still new. He was speaking with a small group of other serious-looking men. The alien is a fool, the man said. Kennedy is a dreamer. They would have us beg for our place in the universe. We will not beg. We will take it. We have the location of their technology. We will secure it. Kennedy's path is a risk we cannot afford. The date displayed in the corner of the hologram was November 21st, 1963. Sue felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. The day before? The hologram vanished, leaving the wall blank. The faction you observed believed a militarized, secretive response was the only logical path, the custodian explained. They saw the designated contact, President Kennedy, as an obstacle. His public revelation would have undermined their goal of weaponizing the recovered technology. His removal was deemed a strategic necessity. They killed him, Jin said, the truth settling like a stone in his gut. They killed him because he wanted to tell the truth, because he wanted to unite people. And they wanted a war. The assassination served two purposes. It removed a political obstacle and created a permanent state of global tension and mistrust, which they believed was useful for control. Sue walked slowly to the central dais and looked at the black obelisk. It was the heart of all this, the source of the truth and the lie. So the people who did this, they never got your technology? After the death of the designated contact, I enacted emergency protocols. I sealed this facility. The faction attempted to gain entry for 4.2 years. They were unsuccessful. They concluded the technology was lost or non-functional. Their records indicate they shifted their focus to other methods of global surveillance and control, using the prevailing climate of fear. Their records? Jin asked. You have their records? I have monitored all global data networks since my activation, the custodian stated simply. I have a complete archive. A new terrifying understanding dawned on Sue. The conspiracy wasn't just a historical event. It was ongoing. The men who killed a president to start a secret war were still out there, or their successors were. They were still working, still manipulating, still ensuring the world remained divided and afraid, all while unknowingly proving the aliens' case for quarantine. If we go to the authorities, Sue said, turning to Jin, her voice hollow, who can we trust? What if we go to the very people whose organization did this? They would take this place. They would silence us, and they would try to start the war they always wanted. Jin felt a surge of helpless anger. They were two nobodies. They had no money, no power, no friends in high places. They held the most important secret in the world, and they had no way to tell anyone without risking everything. So what do? He asked, his voice rising in frustration. We just live here? We just let it happen? We know the world is going to end because some aliens think we're a bunch of fighters, and we can't even tell anyone? Sue didn't answer right away. She looked back at the custodian's screen. "Custodian," she said, her voice gaining a new strength. "You said Kennedy was preparing a speech. The one he was going to give in Dallas. Do you have it?" "I have the complete final draft." "Show us," Sue said. The text appeared on the main wall, not in hologram, but in clear, simple text. It was not the speech from the history books. It was different. It spoke of looking past the Cold War, past national borders. It spoke of a new frontier, not of land, but of the human spirit. It talked about the discovery of other intelligences, not as a threat, but as a mirror, showing humanity who they truly were and who they could become. It was a call to choose a better path together. It was hopeful and brave and beautiful, and it was never given. Tears welled in Sue's eyes. She saw it now. The problem wasn't that the truth was too dangerous. The problem was that it had been stolen and hidden by people who preferred fear to hope. "They didn't just kill a man," Sue said, wiping her eyes. "They killed an idea. They killed the future he saw for us." Jin read the speech, his anger cooling into a deep, cold resolve. He looked at his sister. "Sue, you were right before. This is our house. This is our problem. They," he pointed at the wall where the hologram of the military man had been, "they don't get to decide our future anymore." "What are you saying?" Sue asked. "We're not going to the authorities," Jin said, a plan forming in his mind. It was a crazy plan, but it was the only one they had. "We're going to the people. We're going to do what Kennedy never got to do. We're going to tell everyone, but how?" Sue gestured around the room. "We can't exactly hold a press conference in a secret basement." Jin walked over to the console next to Sue. "Custodian, you monitor all data networks. Can you put things on them?" "I have the capability." Jin and Sue looked at each other. The same thought passed between them. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It might not work. But it was the only way to bypass the lies, the secrets, the men in shadows. "We have the proof," Sue said, her voice steady now. "The holograms. The records." Kennedy's speech. "We have it all. We give it to the world," Jin finished. "All of it, at once. We let every person on Earth see what they did. We let them see the choice we were supposed to have." They stood together in the silent, humming chamber, two poor siblings in a broken house, looking at a machine that held the keys to humanity's past and future. The weight was still immense, but it was no longer a weight of despair. It was a weight of purpose. They would finish the speech that was interrupted by a gunshot over 50 years ago. They would not let the stolen future remain stolen. The plan was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. They would use the custodian to release the truth to the entire world all at once. There would be no single target, no government agency to intercept it. It would appear everywhere at the same time, a digital ghost that could not be contained. For the next 2 days, they barely left the chamber. They slept in shifts on the floor upstairs, eating dry food from their supplies. Their world had shrunk to the cool humming room beneath the desert. Their first task was to choose the evidence. The custodian's archives were vast. There were hours of holographic recordings between Kennedy and the alien, Kale. There were technical schematics of the long-lost ship. There were the cold, clinical records of the conspiracy that planned the assassination. "We can't show all of it," Jin said, his eyes tired from staring at the screens. "It's too much. People will get lost. They need to see the important parts," Sue agreed. They had to tell a clear story. They worked with the custodian, acting like editors for the most important news report in history. They chose 3 key pieces. First, the introduction. A clear holographic recording of President Kennedy sitting in the chamber, his face serious, listening as Kale explained the Galactic Compact and the concept of the volatile sapient verdict. They made sure the alien's explanation of quarantine was included, its terrible finality unmistakable. Second, the hope. They included the part where Kennedy argued for humanity's potential. They showed his determination to find a peaceful path. Then they displayed his unfinished speech, the words of unity and shared destiny glowing on the wall. Third, the betrayal. This was the hardest part. They selected the hologram of the military man, the one with the cold eyes arguing for control and secrecy. They included the date, November 21st, 1963, and his dismissal of Kennedy's plan as a fantasy. They did not show the assassination itself. They didn't need to. The implication was a more powerful punch. We don't accuse anyone by name, Sue said firmly. We just show what happened. Let people see the truth for themselves. Jin nodded. And we don't say anything about the custodian or this room. We let the old recordings speak for themselves. They decided against a live broadcast. That would be too chaotic, too easy to dismiss as a hoax. Instead, they would create a digital package. A single, high-quality video file that combined all three pieces into one compelling 10-minute story. The custodian would render it and then upload it to every major video platform, social media network, and public data archive simultaneously. It would be like a seed, planted in 1,000 different gardens at once. The custodian was ready. The file was prepared. All that was left was to give the command. They stood together in the chamber, the silence feeling heavier than ever. The black obelisk stood in the center, a silent witness. This is it, Jin said, his voice low. Once we do this, there's no going back. Our lives, they'll never be the same. Our lives were already changed the moment we bought this house, Sue replied. She looked at the screen. The world has been living a lie. Everyone deserves to know what we are and what we were supposed to be. Jin took a deep breath. He looked at his sister, so small and yet so determined. He was scared, but he was proud. Okay, he said. Do it. Sue turned to the console. Custodian. Release the package, confirmed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft chime echoed through the chamber. A progress bar appeared on the main screen, moving with impossible speed. Upload to YouTube. Complete. Upload to Twitter, Yaosex. Complete. Upload to Facebook. Complete. Upload to TikTok. Complete upload to Wikimedia Commons. Complete upload to public university servers. Complete. The list went on, scrolling faster than their eyes could follow. In less than a minute, it was done. The data packet is now live on 14,887 major global network nodes. It is propagating. The process cannot be stopped. They had done it. The truth was out. Exhausted, they trudged up the stairs and back into the dusty study. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the broken windows. Jin pulled 2 bottles of water from their cooler and handed one to Sue. They sat on the dusty floor, leaning against the wall, and waited. Sue pulled out her simple smartphone. The signal was weak, but it was enough. She opened a popular video site. She didn't have to search. The video was right there at the top of the trending list. It had a simple title, one they had chosen. JFK's unfinished speech, the full recording. The thumbnail was a still image of a young, determined President Kennedy. Her hand trembled as she tapped the screen. The video played. She saw the clean, impossibly real holographic footage. She heard Cale's melodic, translated voice. She saw the proof they had assembled. It was all there. She scrolled down. The video had only been live for 10 minutes, but the comment count was already in the hundreds of thousands. The view counter was climbing into the millions. It's working, she whispered, showing the phone to Jin. They read the comments. They were a chaotic mix of shock, disbelief, and awe. This can't be real. The CGI is incredible. That's not CGI. I've never seen a hologram that clear. This is real. They killed him. They killed him because he wanted to tell us the truth. We're not alone. And we've been judged. This changes everything. Then the first news alerts started popping up on Sue's phone. Major networks were breaking into their regular programming. The headlines were frantic, confused. Unexplained video sparks global debate. Tech experts baffled by JFK alien footage. Government officials urge calm. Promise investigation. They saw a clip of a news anchor, his face pale, trying to report on the story. We cannot verify the authenticity of this material at this time, but we are devoting all our resources. Then something strange began to happen. Sue refreshed her feed. The original video on the major site was gone. A message appeared. This content has been removed for violating our terms of service. They're taking it down, Jin said, a spike of fear shooting through him. But it was too late. As quickly as one video was deleted, 10 more appeared. People had downloaded it. They were re-uploading it. They were sharing it on private servers, on messaging apps, on foreign websites that were beyond the reach of any one government. The truth was a virus, and it had found 1 million hosts. They saw a video filmed on a phone of a large crowd gathering in a city square in Europe. They were not rioting. They were standing together, watching the video on a giant public screen. The crowd was silent, mesmerized. Another clip showed a group of people in an Asian city, holding up handmade signs. The signs were simple. One read, "We are human." Another said, "They stole our future." The old divided world was trying to fight back to suppress the information. But the genie was out of the bottle. The story was too big, too profound. It wasn't about politics anymore.
It was about identity.
It was about the fate of the human species. Jin and Sue sat on the dusty floor of their broken mansion, watching the world wake up on the small screen of a phone. They had no idea what would happen next. There would be chaos, denial, and anger. But for the first time, there was also a flicker of something new. A sense of a shared story, a shared danger, a shared destiny. They had thrown a stone into the pond of history, and the ripples were now spreading across the entire world. The quiet of the desert outside was no longer empty. It was filled with the silent, echoing shock of a humanity that had just been told the biggest secret of all. The days that followed were a blur. Jin and Sue became prisoners in their own home, but they were the jailers. They dared not leave, afraid of what they would find outside or who might find them. Their only window to the world was Sue's smartphone, its screen a portal to a planet in turmoil. The initial chaos was exactly what they had feared. Governments issued stern denials, calling the video an elaborate, malicious hoax. Talking heads on news channels argued, some claiming it was foreign propaganda, others a dangerous cult stunt. For about 24 hours, the old world fought back hard, but the evidence was too good. The holographic footage was perfect in a way that no special effects company could replicate. Audio experts declared the voice of JFK to be authentic, not a copy. Historians pointed out details in the room, in his mannerisms that were never publicly known. The truth had a weight that the lies could not bear. Then the shift began. It didn't come from a president or a prime minister. It came from the people. A massive, peaceful gathering filled the National Mall in Washington, D.C. People held candles, not protest signs. They stood in silence, listening to a replay of Kennedy's unfinished speech played over loudspeakers. The same thing happened in London, in Tokyo, and Nairobi. The crowds were not angry mobs. They were somber, thoughtful assemblies. The phrase, "We are human," began to appear everywhere. It was written on streets, projected onto buildings, shared millions of times online. It was not a cry of nationalism, but of species-wide solidarity. The alien threat of quarantine had done what no war or disaster ever could. It made every previous conflict on Earth seem like a family argument. Scientists around the world released a joint statement. They admitted they could not prove the video was real, but they also could not prove it was fake. More importantly, they stated that the message was one that deserved attention regardless of its origin. The environmental crises, the endless wars, these were now framed as symptoms of a species failing its final exam. 1 week after the upload, Jin and Sue were sitting in their kitchen eating a quiet meal of canned beans. The initial storm of fear had settled into a strange, watchful calm in their desert hideout. Down in the chamber, the custodian screen lit up without being prompted. Incoming priority communication. Jin and Sue dropped their spoons and ran down the stairs. The main wall was glowing. It was not showing a hologram from the past. It was showing a live, moving image. The quality was strange, as if seen through water, but it was clear. It showed a being. It was not the shimmering light form of Kale. This one had a physical shape, tall and slender, with large, dark eyes and skin that seemed to reflect the light like mother of pearl. It stood in a room that looked as advanced as their own chamber. The being spoke. Its voice was translated by the custodian into the same flawless Korean. "People of Earth, I am a representative of the Compact Council. The data packet you have released has been received and verified by our systems." "It is genuine." Jin grabbed Sue's hand. His own hand was cold and trembling. "The case of humanity is now reopened. The actions of your designated contact, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, were recorded and logged. His removal by elements of your own species was also noted. The subsequent 5 decades of your history have been, until now, a continuation of the patterns that led to the initial verdict." The being paused, its large, dark eyes seeming to look right through the screen and into their souls. "However, the recent event is anomalous. A covert, controlled disclosure was the planned path for your assessment. What has occurred is not covert. It is a global public awakening, initiated not by a leader but by two unnamed individuals. The global reaction is unexpected. The being gestured and data streams flowed across the wall behind it. They showed the global gatherings, the scientific statements, the countless expressions of unity under the banner of a shared humanity. The rate of informational spread, the predominantly non-violent public response, and the immediate shift in global discourse are statistical outliers. You were given a truth that was meant to divide and control you. Instead, you are using it to seek connection. This alters the assessment parameters. Sue found her voice, though it was a whisper. What does this mean? As if it heard her, the being continued. The quarantine clock is hereby paused. The verdict of volatile sapient is set aside, pending further observation. Humanity is now reclassified as a provisional species. Provisional. Jin repeated, "You have proven you can be unified by a common hope and not just a common fear. This is the foundation of a mature interstellar society. But a foundation is not a building. You have been given a second chance. You must now build upon it. The compact will be watching." The transmission ended. The wall returned to its normal glowing state. The chamber was utterly silent. The only sound was the low, constant hum of the machinery. Jin and Sue stood there, holding hands, trying to understand what had just happened. They hadn't saved the world, not yet. But they had stopped the clock. They had won a stay of execution. A second chance, Sue breathed. They went back upstairs, their minds reeling. The world outside was the same desert, the same broken mansion. But everything was different. Days turned into weeks. The initial global frenzy settled into a deep, worldwide conversation. The old divisions and arguments were still there, but now they were happening under a new, larger context. Every political decision, every environmental policy was now debated with a new question in mind. What does this mean for humanity? They learned, through the custodian's quiet monitoring, that a frantic secret search was underway by powerful agencies to find the source of the video. But the trail led nowhere. They had used a ghost in the machine to speak, and the ghost had vanished. One evening, as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, Jin and Sue stood on the cracked patio. The air was cool. "They don't know it was us," Jin said, looking out at the vast, empty landscape. "The whole world was changed, and no one knows we did it." "That's how it had to be," Sue replied. "We weren't the leaders. We were just the spark." She looked back at the crumbling house. It was no longer just a ruin. It was a monument. It was the place where the future of humanity had been quietly, secretly altered. "We have a lot of work to do," she said, a small smile touching her lips. "The roof still leaks." Jin laughed, a real genuine laugh for the first time in weeks. It felt good. The weight was still there, the knowledge of the watchful eyes in the stars. But it was no longer a crushing weight. It was a purpose. Humanity's test was not over. It had only just begun. But they had passed the first most important question. When faced with the truth of their own possible extinction, they had chosen overwhelmingly to look up and see each other as one people. Down in the hidden chamber, the black obelisk stood silent on its dais, but now a soft, steady green light pulsed gently from its core, rhythmically like a calm and steady heartbeat. It was a signal of waiting. A signal of hope. The story of the poor siblings and the deserted mansion was over. The story of humanity was just beginning its most important chapter.